In 1680, a French king built a palace just to grow oranges. It cost more than most European countries earned in a year. It required an army of servants burning coal around the clock, and it fed exactly one man. In 2024, a building in Kyoto with no windows, no soil, and no natural light produces 8 million heads of lettuce every single year. Harvest cycle, 30 days. Water use, 5% of what an outdoor field would need. Weather dependency, 0, same idea, completely different civilization. This is 10,000 years of humanity fighting climate, geography, and time. Grow food where nature said it was impossible, and the story of how we finally won. Welcome to FarmTech Origins, where farming impossibility becomes the technology that feeds the next civilization. Today, the greenhouse. Before the greenhouse, there was one law in agriculture that nobody questioned. You grow where the climate allows. If you lived in England, you didn't eat oranges. If you lived in Norway, you didn't grow tomatoes. If winter came, and winter always came, the harvest ended. 3 walls stood between humanity and year-round food. First, temperature. A single frost could erase an entire season overnight. Second, geography. The most populated cities on Earth sat in climates completely wrong for the food their people needed most. Third, time. Seasons controlled everything. You planted when nature said plant. You harvested when nature said harvest. And you starved when nature said starve. Something had to break that cycle. And the first attempt at breaking it didn't come from a farmer. It came from an emperor who couldn't stop eating cucumbers. The Romans called it a specularium. Emperor Tiberius had a medical condition. His physicians ordered him to eat cucumber every single day. Every single day of the year. The problem: cucumbers don't grow in Roman winters. So Roman engineers built him a mobile growing cart, wheeled into sunlight during the day, moved indoors at night under sheets of thin, translucent stone called lapis specularis. It was crude. It was expensive. It served exactly one man, but it proved something that nobody had demonstrated before. You could trick a plant into thinking it was still summer. That idea disappeared for over 1,000 years. It came back in Renaissance Italy, carried in the luggage of botanists returning from tropical expeditions. These plants had never seen a European winter. The moment October arrived, they began to die. Italian botanists built the first true heated botanical chambers, south-facing walls, angled glass panels, and iron braziers burning through the night. They called them giardini di semplici, gardens of simples. The plants survived, but the engineering problems were enormous. Glass in the 1600s was expensive, inconsistent, and inefficient. It let in light, but trapped too much heat in summer and lost all warmth in winter. The frames rotted. The structures leaked. The cost to heat them through a northern European winter was extraordinary. Only kings could afford them, and kings built them. Louis XIV of France constructed the Orangerie at Versailles in 1686. A building 230 meters long, 3,000 orange trees, oleanders, palms, bay laurels, furnaces burning around the clock. It was the most expensive way to grow fruit in the history of human civilization, and it was completely impractical for feeding anyone but royalty. The engineering breakthrough that changed everything came not from a botanist. not from a king. It came from a tax. In 1696, England imposed the window tax. The more windows a building had, the more you paid. Architects started eliminating windows overnight. Buildings went dark across England, and greenhouse engineers, forced to find cheaper glass, drove an industrial revolution in glassmaking. By 1845, Britain abolished the glass tax entirely. Within a decade, greenhouse construction exploded. Joseph Paxton, a gardener, not an engineer, designed the Crystal Palace for the Great Exhibition of 1851. Over 90,000 square meters of glass, built in 17 weeks. It was the first prefabricated modular structure in history, mass-produced cast-iron columns, standardized glass panels, assembled like a kit. Paxton had just invented scalable greenhouse architecture. Feeding cities still required something that beautiful architecture alone couldn't provide: heat in winter, at scale, affordably. That problem was solved not by a king or an architect, by a Dutch farmer who couldn't stop losing tomatoes. Dutch growers in the early 1900s discovered something by accident. When they sealed their greenhouses and burned coal to heat them, the CO2 from combustion drifted through the plants, and the plants grew 30% faster. They started running hot water pipes under the soil beds. Then they added artificial lighting. Then they developed the Venlo greenhouse system, a modular aluminum and glass structure that could be extended indefinitely in any direction. The Dutch didn't just build greenhouses. They engineered a climate system and put it inside a building. By the late 20th century, the Netherlands had become the second largest agricultural exporter on Earth, a country the size of West Virginia, feeding a significant portion of the planet. From a single glass tax loophole in 1696 to a global food system. But even the Dutch greenhouse had a ceiling. It still needed land. It still needed sunlight. It still couldn't grow inside a Tokyo skyscraper, a desert city, or a climate-controlled habitat somewhere we've never been. Someone had to ask the absurd question. In 1999, a Columbia University professor named Dickson Despommier asked a question that sounded absurd. What if you stacked farms vertically? Floor by floor, inside a building, with no soil, no sun, no seasons. He called it the vertical farm. The engineers who built the first ones ran into every problem simultaneously. Light was the first wall. Plants need specific wavelengths to photosynthesize. Full-spectrum artificial lighting was either too hot, too expensive, or too dim. Then LED technology crossed a threshold. In 2012, LED panels capable of emitting precise wavelengths, red at 60 nanometers to trigger flowering, blue at 450 nanometers to drive leaf growth, became cheap enough to deploy at scale. For the first time, a farmer could tune light like a radio frequency, tell the plant exactly what to do, when to grow, when to flower, when to stop. Water was the second wall. Traditional soil farming wastes up to 90% of irrigation. Vertical farms adopted aeroponics, delivering nutrients directly to roots through water mist sprayed every few minutes. Water use dropped by 95%. The third wall was yield spread. You in Japan built a facility producing 8 million heads of lettuce per year, inside a building smaller than a football field. Harvest cycle, 30 days, year-round, uninterrupted. The same output from an outdoor farm would require 170 times more land. Today, the most advanced vertical farms run on AI that monitors every plant individually. Computer vision identifies disease before any human eye could see it. Machine learning adjusts the growing environment to optimize each cycle automatically. No pesticides, no herbicides, no failed harvests. From Emperor Tiberius rolling a cucumber cart into Roman sunlight, to a French king spending a nation's fortune on orange trees, to a Dutch farmer accidentally discovering CO2 enrichment, to a Tokyo building that never sees natural daylight producing 8 million plants a year under perfectly calibrated light. The greenhouse didn't just evolve, it became the most controlled, most efficient, most scalable food production system ever built. And here is the part that should stop you cold. Less than 1% of global food production currently happens inside controlled environments. The question is not whether vertical farms will feed the world. The question is how fast the rest of agriculture catches up to what's already possible inside these buildings right now. But to understand why this transition is moving slowly, you need to understand the economic engine that made outdoor industrial farming the global default in the first place. The machine that made food cheap enough that nobody questioned where it came from. That story is already on this channel. And if you've ever walked through a real greenhouse, the old kind with the smell of wet earth and warm glass and plants that had no business being alive in that climate, tell me what it was growing. I want to know in the comments.